Hello,
Right.
Falcons Central Radio Show. I'm Aaron Freeman.
I'm
The guys, Chris.
sorry for the darkness.
Yeah, Scott has, I guess, a new camera or something. So, figuring out it. But we're going to be talking about the Atlanta Falcons. We're going to be recapping Hard Knocks Episode 4. We're going to be talking a lot about the Falcons cuts that they made over the weekend. 53-man roster predictions, since by the time we come back next week, the roster will be established with the practice squad, and then we'll get to your mailbag questions. So, Scott, Hard Knocks, Episode 4, what did you think?
I like how it basically started with our good friend, Keith Armstrong getting on everybody's ass, especially my boy Malachi's, because he was right. He wasn't really trying on special teams. It was obvious. It was a little too obvious.
Yeah.
That made me pretty happy. And then seeing how they all kind of got together and they just really busted their ass that next week. I mean, sometimes that's all it needs. Sometimes that's all you need as a team is just to have somebody lay into you and go, these guys don't want it. These guys don't want it at all. I mean, it worked. Guys started working hard. Guys started busting their ass. Guys started looking really good. And Lamar Holmes out of nowhere looked good this week in the game. Just want to throw that out there. Aaron, 0 pressures, 0 sacks, 0 hurries. He laid 3 goose eggs. I mean, yeah, he had a slight negative run blocking grade, but he can't be perfect. Again, average will take. Especially if it's above average in pass blocking and below average in run blocking. That's forgivable.
Yeah.
You know? We'll take that every day.
Yeah, I like to think that my lack of faith in Lamar Holmes leading into the week was what inspired him to play so well. So I'll take full credit for that.
I don't care what it was. I don't care if he just got married to the most beautiful woman in the world and, you know, a little bit of that helped him out. Like, anything is what was needed, and I think having John Asamoah right next to you helps out. But I do want to say, remember when Joe Hawley got in that fight right after Matt Ryan?
Oh, okay, that one.
Right after Matt Ryan, like, kind of butt heads with the linebacker, Joe Hawley kind of got up in that linebacker's face. You notice the second guy who backed up Hawley? There was Hawley, and then there was the second guy to the scene, Lamar Holmes.
Yeah.
Just saying, guys.
I was just going to say that even I think Ryan Schrader came off the bench to get into some of those Titans players' faces. You know, in the NBA, that would be a fine. So.
Yeah, he's probably going to get a $15,000 fine for that. But
we'll take it. You know.
I'm sure they'll have no issues with that.
Yeah. But yeah, it was, you know, Hard Knocks was interesting because it was a lot of coaches ripping into guys. You know, Rashid Hageman got an earful from Brian Cox, which pretty much happens every episode. But you know, this episode it seemed to be piled on a little bit more, and it's good. It's good to see the coaches getting after guys because they need it. They need that fire lit on them because you know when you heard what Tony Gonzalez had to say after the season, basically no one wanted it last year, and that was one of the reasons why the season fell apart. And you know, I don't think that's going to happen this year. So hopefully it won't. Yeah.
Hopefully there's no issues, but let's be honest here, we don't know for sure.
Yeah.
Now, the Falcons did look really good on the line. Jake Matthews allowed the only sack of the night. That was the only time Matt Ryan got touched or hurried all night. I mean, I can forgive a rookie mistake like what Matthews made right there.
Mm-hmm.
If that's the only time he gets hurried all night in a game against anybody else, no one is going to have an issue with this offensive line. And Matt Ryan's going to put up some retarded numbers. Like 5,000 yards, 35 touchdowns kind of numbers. Like just insanity type numbers. Like Drew Brees with all of his weapons the past few years numbers.
Okay. That's pretty bold, I guess, but not that bold, I guess. I mean, well, he threw for like 4,500 last year, so I guess, having Julio Jones for a full season can get you the other extra 500.
I mean, that and Devin Hester probably looking much better than he did. There's some good shit on this team. There's some good shit that is coming out of these guys that really just needed to happen. I don't know how else to put it. You needed guys to just show up and look like NFL football players. And they're finally doing that. Lamar Holmes being one of them.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, Scott, you got anything else you want to talk about Hard Knocks? I know we want to talk about these cuts and this roster stuff, and I know that's going to take a good amount of time, so...
Well, the one thing I do want to talk about with the cuts is Tyrell Johnson, when he got cut on Hard Knocks. And I said, I always felt like I was welcome here, but that other place I just didn't like. That other place he was talking about was Minnesota.
Uh-huh.
Minnesota just did not feel like home to him, and he didn't feel like they cared about him. That's huge. That's huge for a guy to say that kind of stuff.
Yeah, wasn't he there when Brad Childress was there?
He was there for Childress. He was there for all of the Leslie Frazier years, and he was there a little bit lately. Like a couple other. He was also at a couple other teams like the Rams and all that. But he said even compared to the Rams, or like compared to anywhere else he's been, Atlanta always felt the most welcoming.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting for him to say that, because it's not like a rookie has nothing to compare it to, but Johnson's played for different coaches, different teams, and that's a positive thing. Okay. Yeah, it's yeah. I guess it's just thinking about it and him saying that, I'm sure he was pretty happy when he got the call from the Falcons a couple of weeks ago, since he had basically been out of football for 11 months. And it was probably a pleasant surprise to him to get the call and then come to Flowery Branch and be treated as well as he was, even though he didn't make the team. But speaking of all those cuts, Scott, did any of the cuts that the Falcons made, they put 4 guys on reserve lists, Marquise Sproul and Mike Johnson on IR, Zeke Mata and Drew Davis on the PUP list, and they cut, 11 guys? Any of those moves surprise you, shock you?
The only move that I thought might have been a little too soon and kind of shocks me a little bit was Brendan Daly. I thought he was seeing a lot more time with the second unit on defense. I think he's a better player than Dobbins is on defense, but Dobbins had the edge on special teams. But when I'm looking for guys on special teams, I like the younger, faster, stronger guys. And I was a little bit shocked that Jerome Smith got cut as early as he did. I thought they were going to cut either him or Vaughn in the first cut, and then the next one the second cut, but it just sucks to see that, because I thought Jerome Smith out of all of them is going to be the most likely to be on the practice squad.
Okay. Yeah. none of the cuts really surprised me. I was a little surprised that Julian Jones got cut instead of Freddie Martino, just because Jones has been playing a lot more. But it wasn't like Julian Jones had, or either one had really done a whole lot to stand out in the field. But other than that, I think all of them were pretty not surprising. The two guys that got cut that I really thought have a legit shot at the practice squad were Jeff Matthews, the quarterback, and Devontae Glover-Wright, the cornerback. I thought both of them, in what limited action they got, they looked, practice squad worthy. But, whether they actually land there, we'll talk about that a little bit later when we talk about who the guys we thought would make the 53 roster. What are your thoughts on Drew Davis going to the PUP list? Like, do you have any sort of, hesitation with basically a guy that, was supposed to only have a 6-week recovery from foot surgery, now all of a sudden is going to turn out to be like 12 or 15 weeks or something like that?
It wouldn't shock me if the Falcons end up doing a little bit better than Drew Davis long term. I do think that Davis is going to be cut after this season, or basically allowed to walk after this season, because I think they really like what Reed's bringing to the table. I think they really like what Boldevine's bringing to the table. And again, I'll get back to that later, but Davis doing that, I mean, Davis going on a PUP list for another 6 weeks is basically them saying, you know what, we're going to see what we have in some of these young guys, or another one of these young guys, and if we like them better, we're just either going to release them, or we're just going to let them do what they're going to do. Like, we're going to let them get destroyed. They're not destroyed, but we're going to let him off the roster. We're going to let him. I'm losing train of thought here. Sorry, I'm doing two things at once.
Yeah, I understand. I think I understand what you're saying. Basically, it's 6 weeks for somebody else to step up, and if they do, then Drew Davis is basically expendable. If they don't, then they can bring him back, and if there's an injury between now and week 6 or week 7, and then they have this, I guess, trump card in Drew Davis, you can call him that, to stash away for a later time.
Yeah, basically. You got the trump card, you got a guy who you like in Drew Davis, but if Reedy and Boldevine, or if Reedy or Boldevine, or Reedy and Boldevine end up being better, then that's who you got to keep. Hell, if Eric Weems is better, that's who you got to keep. But I have again, I'll get to this later, but I have a feeling that Weems isn't making the roster, and that the Falcons are going to take a shot and do something bold for once with the wide receiver core.
I will be interested in hearing you talk about that, because I've been wanting that for a long time. Okay, Scott. Talked a little bit about the Falcons cuts. Any players that got cut in this first cut down from other teams interest you?
There wasn't anything that was really super surprising. You've always got the one or two guys who you think, man, this guy would be great on the Falcons, but I think they might be better off just staying pat. And I see a couple of those guys, but no one really stands out. I'll put it that way. Did anybody stand out for you?
No, not really. I mean, there's a couple of guys that I like, but I know there's like a snowball's chance in hell that the Falcons will sign them, so it's kind of just, wasted breath. But, I'll rattle off a couple of names. Trent Edwards, quarterback. Thad Lewis, quarterback. Adrian Wilson, safety. Winston Justice, offensive tackle. Cody Hoffman was a wide receiver that I know they showed a lot of interest in the draft process. What is that, 6'4", 6'5", or something like that?
Yeah, I could see Hoffman getting a shot, but on the practice squad.
And Terrell Thomas, another body at cornerback, a little bigger cornerback who can also potentially play some safety. So, those were some of the guys that stood out to me. But I don't think the Falcons are going to sign anyone. Hoffman maybe as a practice squad guy, as you say, but that's about it.
I mean, yeah, it's tough to argue with any of that. There's just not anybody who makes you go, hey, this is the guy. This is the one guy that's going to make this team go from at the Atlanta Falcons of 2013 to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, usually that player rarely gets cut in the first cut down. Maybe they might get cut this weekend in the second cut downs, the final cut downs, but doubtful.
Yeah, completely doubtful. Completely doubtful. That guy normally doesn't get cut, period.
Yeah, pretty much. You know, might get traded if he's Logan Mankins, but you know.
Logan Mankins is a very unique situation because he's a Patriot. And we all know that the Patriots don't have any loyalty whatsoever. They couldn't care if you've been with that team for the past 40 years. If they can trade you for a pick, they'll do it.
Yeah.
They just don't care.
Yeah.
They are the honey badgers of the NFL in terms of they just don't give a yeah.
Yeah, that's the Patriots in a nutshell. The honey badgers of the NFL. All right, Scott, let's talk about these. Who do we think is going to make the final 53? And we'll also give our 10-man practice squads.
All right.
Let's go position by position. We did this early this summer, and obviously there are going to be a few changes. I don't remember who we picked at the beginning of the summer, but yeah. So we'll just go position by position. And the interesting thing, I'm looking at Scott's roster and mine, and there aren't a whole lot of differences. It's like 2 players I think we have differently making the 53-man roster. So I guess we can argue about those 2 guys till we're blue in the face.
I mean, it's probably a little bit more than that because I've got a couple guys that I like to keep. Like, I don't think they're going to keep 6 corners. I don't think any NFL team is going to do that.
Okay. Well, we'll talk about that when we get to the quarterbacks. But let's start off with the quarterbacks. No disagreement here. We both have Matt Ryan and Sean Renfree making the team.
I think that's pretty obvious. I mean, Renfree's looked good, and Ryan has looked, he's Matt Ryan.
Yeah, he's been all right. He's been all right, so, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and just like running backs. Running backs, 39, 32, 33, Freeman, Rogers, Jackson. Just going by jersey numbers here.
I was wondering if you're going to keep going with the jersey numbers.
39, 32, 33, and 35. So those 4 guys. And then Patrick DeMarco, I forget what number he is. He's 42, right?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, so Anton Smith, Freeman, DeMarco, all those guys are all going to get on the roster.
Yeah, no surprises there.
Not a single.
Now, wide receiver is where we disagree a little bit. Now, we both have 6 wide receivers, but who we have making the team as a 6 wide receiver is different. Now, we have Julio Jones, Roddy White, Harry Douglas, Devin Hester, and Bernard Reedy each as the 5 receivers. Now, I have Eric Weems making it as that 6 spot. Scott has Geraldo Boldevine making that 6 spot. So,
Geraldo Boldevine.
Clearly I'm right because, Eric Weems is Eric Weems. But, Scott, explain to the people, I think I already know what you will say, but explain to the people why you think Boldevine's going to make the team.
Boldevine's taller. Boldevine's hits like a linebacker, and Boldevine's got a lot better. He may not be the better all-around special teamer. He's not a great returner by any means. But as a gunner, I think he's a better gunner. I think he's right there with Weems as a gunner. And I think as a wide receiver, he's way better than Weems. And he's got potential to be ridiculously better than Williams.
Okay. I'm not a big believer in the Boldevine hype. I do think he has upside. I do think he's going to take a very, very long time to develop that upside. I think Weems, I disagree on the point that I think Weems is a much better gunner. Weems pretty much led the Falcons in special teams tackles every year. I think he led the Bears the last 2 seasons. When he made the Pro Bowl in 2010 it was, I think he was like second or third in the league in special teams tackles that year. It wasn't just because he was a good returner that year. It was also a special team. So I think that's what's really going to push Weems onto the roster. I think Boldevine, we'll talk about it later, but I'll say it right now. I think Boldevine's going to be at the practice squad. But I think while he does have the upside to be a better player than Eric Weems, I don't think he's going to be that guy this year. And it may not be that guy next year. I think he needs to improve his hands, his ball skills, his route running, beating press coverage, all those things. And can he get there? Sure. He's got Terry Robisky, one of the best wide receiver coaches out there, but it's going to take some time. So I think they'll stash him on the practice squad and see what happens next year.
I mean, I think he's going to be that guy who every year there's a surprise, right?
Mm-hmm.
Every year there's that guy that gets cut, and you go, wow, this guy got cut? Really? And I think this year, that's Eric Williams.
Okay. That's fair. I don't think Williams is guaranteed to make the roster, but I think at this point, Keith Armstrong, I think, has a lot of trust in him, and I don't think we'll be seeing Keith Armstrong laying into Eric Williams like he was laying into some of these young guys. So I think that might give him the edge. But we'll see.
We'll definitely see. Right. Tight ends. Toilolo, Pasco, and Schuler. That's pretty easy.
Yeah.
Now, you have just 8 offensive linemen. I have 9.
Yeah.
We both agree on the starters. Matthews, Blaylock, Hawley, Asamoah, and Holmes. We both agree that Khan's is going to make the roster somehow, Karimi's going to make the roster somehow, and Schrader's going to make the roster. I also think Harlan Gunn makes the roster. You seem to not think that.
Yeah, this is the example of what you just said. The guy, they cut that guy. Like, I want Harlan Gunn to make the roster, but it always seems like every year there's one guy that I want to make the roster that doesn't make the roster. And for whatever reason, I think it's going to be Harlan Gunn. That's going to be that guy that gets cut because Karimi can play guard. They've been working a little bit of Schrader in guard. Obviously, Khan's has experience at guard. And I think given, the strength of the offensive line right now is Blaylock and Asamoah, the interior, I think they'll be willing to roll the dice and not bring a pure guard on the roster, and I think that's what gets Gunn cut.
Well, Gunn can also play center.
He can.
And I do think that the Falcons keep their standard 9 men that they've always kept under Mike Smith. They've always kept 9 offensive linemen.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
7 on game days, and they have 2 guys in case somebody gets hurt, so they can, have that extra depth. Which is why I think they end up going with Gunn and keeping Gunn on the roster. The spot that I see getting the cut is cornerback. You've got 6 corners. I've only got 5. I don't think Arenas makes the roster.
Okay.
But again, we're a little early for that.
Yeah.
At defensive line, we've got Jackson, we've got Soliai, we've got Babineau, we've got Hageman, we've got our boy Corey Peters, and then we've got Malachi Goodman, and then we've got Travian Robertson. 7 guys, all going to rotate, all going to get a lot of playing time, all just good football players there. Atlanta had one of the worst run defenses in the league last year, and now they probably got one of the better defensive lines in the league, at least for a 3-man front.
You have a deep rotation. Yeah.
They have a very good rotation. Now, I split my edge players and my linebackers.
Okay, well, it doesn't really make a difference because we picked the same guys.
We did. We picked Beeman. We picked Massaquoi. We picked Mapanga. We picked OC, and we picked Star. And
Now,
then
Scott, before we jump into the linebackers, I know a lot of people think Jacquez Smith is going to make the team. Speak to why you don't think he'll make the team.
when you get thrown out of the third preseason game for doing something stupid, you get cut. Do you get a backup chance? Probably. But he's going to get cut for being stupid in the third preseason game. When you're causing fights and you're the guy whose roster life is on a string, and you do something stupid like that, and every coach you walk by goes, "You're a fucking idiot," because that's what happened when you watched Hard Knocks last night.
Mm-hmm.
Every coach said, as he walked by, I counted probably 4 different coaches, "You're an idiot." Collins, Nolan, and Cox, always Cox, and then Armstrong.
Mm-hmm.
Each one of those 4 guys just called him out. So you're an idiot. You don't deserve to be on the team. Is basically what they told him. Now, will he see some playing time this week? Probably, and then they'll probably cut him and just like, hey, thank you for taking all these reps. But
yeah, I'll echo those same statements. I think it would be different if there wasn't a guy like Tyler Starr on the roster. Like, I think you can say that Smith has outplayed Starr in the preseason, but at the same time, I don't think that one thing, that one mistake, can cost you. In that margin for error is slim, and I think it'll probably cost Smith a spot on the roster. Now, I think he might have a shot at the practice squad, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. But the linebackers, we had the same 4 guys: Paul Warlow, Prince Jimbo, Chapel Bartu, and Dobbins. Now, if I was personally, my personal preference, I'd probably want Pat Angerer there instead of Dobbins. I think Angerer is a better player, but I think Angerer's had like 8 penalties or something this preseason. I know that doesn't sit well with Mike Smith, who hates penalties, so I think that might end up costing him a job.
yeah, that's probably putting it nicely.
Yeah.
I mean, just being honest, that's probably putting it very, very nicely.
Cornerbacks. Okay, now we can debate this cornerback situation. You got the 5 corners: Robert Alford, Desmond Trufant, Robert McClain, Josh Wilson, and Ricardo Allen. Got the same 5, but I threw in Javier Arenas. I guess I should explain why I think Arenas will make the team. I think they're going to keep 10 defensive backs, and because McClain can kind of play both and Allen can play both, they won't really see it as keeping 6 corners. They'll see it as keeping like 5.5 corners, or 5 corners and a hybrid corner safety, So I think that's one of the reasons why Arenas makes the team. Plus, I don't think there's really been any true separation between McClain, Wilson, and Arenas. And so, I just think in the end they're just going to keep all 3, and basically, if whoever starts the season as a nickel cornerback, if he struggles, next guy up. If he struggles, next guy up, and they'll just throw until they figure out who's the best guy. So I think that's what will end up happening.
I still think they end up cutting one, just because I don't think they're going to give Arenas that full shot. He's been playing with the 3s, and he hasn't really been playing that much with the 2s. He's basically been playing backup nickel in the games, and then when he gets in there, he's doing okay, but Wilson's out there with the 1s or the 2s, playing outside, playing inside, playing everywhere, playing left, playing right. Wilson's seeing a lot of time. McClain's seeing a lot of time. Most of his time is with the 1s. I mean, I think Arenas is getting outplayed by Wilson. On special teams, I think it's flipped, but again, it goes down to what do you value more, your defense or your special teams? What's out there more often, your defense or your special teams? What's more important? Well, when they put Wilson out there this past week on special teams, he wasn't a weak link. So as long as the special teams plays like it did this past week, they should be fine. That brings us to safety.
4 safeties: Willie Moe, Dwight Lowry, Kamomi Ishmael, Desmond Southwick.
Now, I think Ishmael's the starter over Lowry.
Ooh. Okay.
With a good performance this week, I think that's what will happen. But, again, if something changes, it's not a problem. It's one of those things. You put a guy out there. If he fails, you flip him back to the other guy. If he fails, you flip him back to the other guy till it works.
Okay. Well, I'm hoping that we don't get to see any of Kamal Ishmael because Willie Moe and Dwight Lowry are fully healthy 16-game seasons playing, Pro Bowl level. So we'll see.
I'm not as worried about that.
Okay. Special teams, big surprise here, Scott. You got Matt Bryant being the kicker and Matt Bosher being the punter and Josh Harris being the long snapper. How do you explain that? Bold predictions right there.
That's one of those. It is what it is.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about the practice squad. Now, interesting again, we have very similar lists. I think maybe 1 or 2 guys different. I have Jeff Matthews making the practice squad. You do too. You have Jerome's.
He's a gunslinger. He's got a great arm, and he played. He went through training camp with the team. He knows the roster.
Yeah, and I think they'll definitely keep 3 quarterbacks, and because Renfrey makes the roster, like if in some universe where T.J. Yates outplays Sean Renfrey on Thursday against the Jaguars, and he makes the team, then Renfrey will probably be that 3rd quarterback on the roster on the practice squad. But in this reality that we're assuming will happen, Renfrey will outplay Yates and win the job permanently, and then that opens the door for Jeff Matthews to get that spot. Now, we each have a running back making the practice squad. You have Jerome Smith. I have Maurice Higgins. The only reason I needed 10 guys, basically I figured one of them was going to be a running back, so I figured they'll keep Higgins, develop him for a year. Maybe he'll take over for Patrick DeMarco next year. I think DeMarco's a free agent, so maybe he gets re-signed. I don't know. But, I know you're smitten with Jerome Smith, so I can understand why you think he'll make the practice squad.
Jerome Snelling, you mean?
Yeah.
I mean, Snelling was on the practice squad for a good bit, too.
Mm-hmm.
Just throwing that out there. No one wants to admit it, but I think Snelling's got some talent. Or not Snelling, but our good old boy Jerome Smith's got some talent.
Yeah.
He got his one catch over the middle and still somehow did something with it that no one was expecting. He gained like 15 yards. And then that's all we've really seen of Jerome Smith.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to see him get a legitimate shot. Just like a legitimate, like, hey, this guy is going to be our main back. Because I think he's got Arian Foster potential. But that's probably hyping him up a little bit more than people are expecting.
Probably, yeah. Wide receiver. We each have a wide receiver. Now, I have Gerald Bodevine. You have Freddie Martino. Now, obviously, I have
Bodevine making the roster,
so.
And Martino as the next guy. If Bodevine doesn't make the roster, obviously, I think he should be the guy.
Mm-hmm.
We'll leave that there, because that's, come on now.
Yeah. We both have the same tight end making the practice squad, Jacob Peterson. Now, I certainly think there's a good possibility that the Falcons could sign a tight end from somebody else that gets cut in the final cuts, because I believe for some reason, like maybe I know Mickey Schuler was that last year, and it seems like they do that like every year. There's a tight end that they bring from somewhere else on the practice squad, so I think that might be a possibility. But if not, then I think Jacob Peterson's the obvious choice.
Oh yeah, the potential's there. We'll just put it that way. The potential's there. Now, I don't think that he'll end up. I don't think Peterson will get replaced on the practice squad, but maybe Mickey Schuler gets replaced on the actual roster.
Okay.
Maybe our boy Bear Pasco gets replaced on the roster.
That's a possibility. I wouldn't disagree with that. 2 offensive linemen each for us. Same 2. Taron Jones, James Stone. Any thoughts on those 2 guys, Scott?
I just kind of picked a name for offensive line. I don't think either. Well, I think Taron Jones makes it, but I don't think Stone does. I think the Falcons will go out there and find a guy who's a rookie and bring him in.
That's fair.
And I don't think it's going to be a center. I think it's going to be a guard. I could have put, Adam Raplalo there just as easy. It's just, there's going to be an offensive lineman. I don't think it's Stone.
Okay.
It's the random offensive lineman. I do think Smith, now moving to the defense, we both got Smith and Smallwood there, as well as McFadden and Baker. Again, Jerome Smith, I could see them giving him a shot on the practice squad. He does have some good. Good effort, good overall talent, but I don't see a guy there who's the next great pass rusher in the NFL.
Okay, that's fair. I think the thing I've been most impressive with Smith this preseason has been his run defense more so than his pass rushing ability. So I can agree with you on that one. Smallwood has not really done a whole lot in the preseason, but he's a draft pick and he'll stick. That's just
I mean, the fact that he's even getting cut.
Preseason.
The fact that he's even getting cut is a bit that's us saying a lot for a draft pick. That means he hasn't shown up at all in any single way.
Pretty much.
I was thinking about even putting Tyler Starr as a cut candidate. And I really like Tyler Starr. It took me a second to be like, you know what? He's the Stanley Mapanga of the year. The guy who does nothing in preseason, somehow makes the roster, and then is a true redshirt project. He's man number 53 on the 53 man.
Yeah, when I was doing it and I was trying to, I was getting the 52 or 53 or something like that right before that. And I was like, oh, I'm missing a guy. I was like, oh, Tyler Starr. He's literally probably the 53rd guy on the roster. So,
I mean, it's like
what are your thoughts on those 2 guys?
I mean, McFadden looked good on special teams, but he hasn't really looked great as a safety. And then Baker has looked pretty much really good at safety and has looked bad on special teams. It's it's tough with the practice squad because you get guys who are half players.
Yeah.
You're if I could combine these 3 guys together, I would have a really good guy.
Mm-hmm.
I would have an all-pro. If McFadden can learn how to play safety like Sean Baker, he's a way better athlete. Hell, you'd have a great safety.
Yeah, McFadden hits. I can say that about that. He hits dudes, so it's nice to have.
He hits dudes. He just doesn't have the same instincts Baker has out there in coverage.
Mm-hmm.
Give McFadden Baker's coverage instincts, and you've got Dwight Lowery.
Yeah, and that may be something that comes with time because this is Baker's 2nd year. He spent most of last year on the practice squad, so he's pretty familiar with the defense. And so maybe this time next year, McFadden can say the same thing. where he's looks a lot more natural, a lot more instinctual on defense. So we'll see what happens.
I hope.
All right. Obviously, that means a number of guys get cut. Guys like T.J. Yates, Josh Vaughn, Jeremy Ebert, Pat McQuiston, Adam Raplogle, Nosa Igwe, Dante Rumpf, Pat Anger, Jordan Maben. Any of those guys that you predict to get cut that you feel like are worth discussing right now?
I mean, maybe Rumpf, because he got the nickname, what was it, Cupcake?
Yeah.
Because he's shaped like a cupcake. I don't know. And Matthews, Matthews is just, he could make the roster if someone gets injured in this next game. McQuiston, he could make the roster if they just say, you know what, screw you, Gabe Creamy, you're injured. Weems, Roby for me, or Martino, Roby for you. I don't see either one of those guys making the roster. Weems could be the dark horse. T.J. Yates, we hardly knew ye.
Yeah.
And then Josh.
I was just going to say, I was this close to putting Dante Rumpf on the practice squad, but just because we have such a deep rotation, it's not really necessary. And presumably with Peters coming back healthy in the very near future, you don't need to carry 4 nose tackles. I'll say this about Cliff Matthews getting cut. I think Cliff Matthews has played very well this preseason. I think he's when you look at the threes, he's been playing mostly with the threes. But when you look at the performance he's the one guy that's really standing out and making plays on that third string. I think it's unfortunate because basically he's basically caught in a numbers game where we've added all these bodies on the defensive line, and now, last year he put on all that weight and he didn't look comfortable with it, and he was looking slow and he was getting pushed around. And this year he's really, gotten comfortable with the added bulk, And unfortunately, it's, Jackson and additions like Hageman and Robertson stepping up and Goodman stepping up, and Matthews is going to be left twisting in the wind, I guess.
I think Matthews will end up on a team. He's just on the Falcons.
Yeah, he can play special teams. He's a high motor guy. He can defend the run, so he should stick somewhere. I don't, it just probably won't be the Falcons.
I could see him going to, say, the Buccaneers, who have a very weak defensive line right now, and sticking to them.
Yeah. Well, you got Gerald McCoy. You don't really need anybody else with the way he's been playing.
Well, you got Gerald McCoy, and you got Mike Johnson, and you got nobody else. And I think if you get Cliff Matthews in there, at least as a rotational guy, he could be better than Daquan Bowers for sure.
Okay.
It's not like the Falcons didn't run a similar scheme for the first few years under with Matthews there.
Yeah, I agree.
So, anyway, mailbag time.
All right, mailbag time. Now, I think we answered some of these questions because some of these were pertaining to the roster. But we got a couple of good ones. All right. IG What's Cookin' 23 at Cookin23 asks, at what point this season do you expect Freeman to take over as the RB1?
The minute that both Jacquizz Rodgers and Steven Jackson go out with injuries for the season.
Okay. So
they're running back on the roster right now. I think Jacquizz Rodgers will be the running back 1 throughout the year, but I think that Freeman will get a lot of touches to where nobody is going to be a reliable fantasy option. Don't take a Falcons running back.
I would echo those sentiments. Yeah.
Unless your team name just happens to be like Quiz on your face, take the Falcons running back.
Yeah, I would say Freeman, I guess the best case scenario for Freeman, and maybe not the best case scenario for the team, but basically Steven Jackson gets hurt, and then that next week, Freeman and Quiz split reps, and Freeman looks a lot better than Quiz in that particular game, and then maybe that next week, he'll be the RB1, and he'll get more carries and those split carries, but it'll be like basically what Snelling and Quiz were last year, where at that point Quiz was the lead guy and then Snelling was his backup, but they. I think in that Dolphins game, Quiz got like 12 carries and Snelling got like 8 carries. So you might see that with Freeman and Quiz, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's about the best thing I could say.
Yeah, Steven Jackson's going to be the running back. As long as he's healthy, he's going to be the number one guy.
Yeah, basically.
He could be averaging 2 yards a carry. He's still going to be the number one guy. They're paying him, and they're going to keep paying him. That's basically Michael Turner was averaging 2 yards a carry, but he was still starting games. So it's not going to be any different with Steven Jackson. Smorgasborg 9. He says, Matthews cut early, sneak into the practice squad. Does Hard Knocks make it harder to get guys through waivers for the practice squad?
Probably not. Teams like guys that they've seen every single day. So most teams will try and keep the guys that they've had through preseason. So I'd say about 8 of the 10 guys on the Falcons practice squad will be guys that they had all through training camp. I'd say maybe 1 or 2 will be a guy that you're just like, who's that? From another team. Like, say Ethan Westbrook gets cut out in St. Louis, and he doesn't want to go back to St. Louis, and then he comes down to Atlanta. That would be that kind of guy.
Yeah, I would say Hard Knocks probably doesn't really factor a whole lot into it. Now, I think it probably has a little bit, the fact that maybe some guy, some GM or some scout, pro scout, for the Vikings or something like that, or some random team, is basically like just watching Hard Knocks and like, oh, this Jacquez Smith guy. They've been focusing on him a lot in this Hard Knocks. Let me go check out his preseason tape. And so maybe he'll be a guy that they might look at. But generally speaking, when teams are looking at guys to claim off of waivers, particularly if they're undrafted free agents, they're going back and looking at their own scouting reports, their in-house scouting reports, and basically saying, did we like this guy in the draft process? Were we talking to him when we were trying to sign undrafted free agents? And if they were and they liked them, and then they go back and watch his tape in the preseason, they like what they see, then they might claim him. But if someone is completely off their radar, if they didn't even know who Jacquez Smith was before Hard Knocks, Hard Knocks is not going to make him harder to sneak through waivers. So there you go.
Yeah, I mean, that's the best answer. They take guys that they like.
Okay, now Smorgasbord 9 has another question, and I don't know if we've already answered it, but he asks, are there any players you think could be cut that would surprise fans? Always seems to be 1 or 2. And I guess I would rephrase this question. Anybody that you predicted to make the team, Scott, that you could say, yeah, there's a decent chance, there's like a 50-50 chance that he gets cut?
Travian Robertson, Gabe Carimi, Tyler Starr, I'd say 50-50. Tim Dobbins could very easily be cut for Yalwyn Smallwood. Even though we haven't seen anything, they might like something that they've seen in practice. Or Pat Angler, same thing. Then, there's a couple spots that you're just like, the spot is basically set. Like tight end, I could see them cutting both Pasco and Schuler if they see 2 guys that are out there that are just really good places. Really good players. And then Ryan Renfree, Jackson Freeman Smith. I could also see them cutting DeMarco if the fullback comes out or gets cut, that they're just like, oh my god, this guy's a great fullback. Which, let's be honest here, who says that? But
Yeah, I think, last year we were talking, this time last year we were talking about Stephen Nicholas possibly getting cut. And if there was any veterans that were, some people think are on the bubble, I've heard Corey Bierman, I've heard O.C. Munoz, but they're not going to get cut. So I don't think we're going to have that sort of situation again this year. I guess, mentioning guys, I would say Josh Wilson, he'd be another guy that might get cut. if they like Arenas and McLean better and keep only 5 corners. That's another name I'll throw out there. All right, Andrew Scheiwaller, or whatever his name is, I don't know. Should the Falcons use Hester like the Seahawks use Percy Harvin? Yes. Get the ball.
Does a bear take a shit in the woods?
Yes. Get the ball into his hands and
screen
get out of
screen pass, screen pass, screen pass, screen pass. All day, every day.
Jet sweep, end around, screen pass.
Slants, that 3 wide to the left slant idea was beautiful. Hey, let's put Harry and Roddy and Julio all on the left. And let's put Hester on the right. And let's just throw it to Hester. And have him break this guy's ankles. That seems like a good plan. It worked. I mean, it really does seem like a good plan. Devontae Hughes asks, how can Mapanga and Goodman improve? Just keep doing what they're doing. They have improved. They need to improve some more, but hard work. That's how any player improves. Hard work, listen to Brian Cox, and you're good to go.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to sit here and think, like, what areas of weakness do they have that, like Mapanga obviously isn't the biggest guy in the world, but he can't really help that. So I guess, stay in the weight room, I guess. I don't know. And, Goodman just basically needs to, basically show his outstanding, ability more consistently snap to snap. So just getting more consistent, snap to snap. That's really about it,
Yeah, basically.
All right. Brian Shep 21 asks, will Boldevine make the roster? I think we answered that question. I kind of like what I see, and he can be a force in the red zone. Do you agree with that, Scott?
He could be a force in the red zone. He could be a great player if they just let him. So I say yes, but you know me. I'm a little bit higher on some guys than others were.
Yeah.
To be fair, I said the same thing that I said about Boldevine in 2014 that I said about. So the same things about Boldevine in 2014 that I said about Paul Warlow in 2013.
Okay. I figured we were going to get a Paul Warlow name drop at some point, so okay.
Middle of the bowl. Boldevine looked good. Seems like a hard worker. His coach really liked him. So, just a thought.
Okay. All right. Chris Walker asks, will the Falcons D hold up enough for the offense to be more balanced, or will Matt Ryan need to pass for 5,000 yards?
I mean, Matt Ryan passing for 5,000 yards is something that should happen. Let's see. Matt Ryan passing for 5,000 yards, I think is going to happen either way. If those guys can combine for another... If those guys can combine for just another 2,000, Falcons will be good. Just average 120, 130 yards a game on the ground. Doesn't matter who's doing it. I think the run game can do that. I think that would be considered a balanced offense at that point, too.
Okay. Well, I would say yes, we will be more balanced because last year we set the record for a team that threw the ball more than any other team, or at least percentage-wise, not actual attempts, but, 70% passing. That no other team has thrown the ball that much in NFL history. So we will be more balanced than that just by default. I don't think Matt Ryan's going to throw for 5,000 yards. I got him around about 4,300. Will the D hold up enough? Yeah, basically, if the offense can get back to what they were in 2012 and before, where they were one of the better scoring offenses in the first half, and if maybe, just maybe, the Falcons stop sucking in the third quarter and actually can start scoring points in the third quarter, then yeah, the defense will be good enough. If the offense can score points on a consistent basis for the first, 3, maybe even 4 quarters. So yeah.
I think that the Falcons are going to be a good bit better on defense than anyone's giving them credit for, too.
Okay.
But I'm probably one of the only ones.
Yeah, we've gotten a mailbag question like 3 weeks in a row. Basically, people asking us, do you think the defense is going to be trash? So yeah, I think at least some of our listeners and mailbag questioners don't think the defense is going to be that good, but we'll see. A. England asks, if Tyler Starr is put on the practice squad, how long till another team poaches him?
I don't think he would end up on the practice squad, honestly. I think if the Falcons cut him, another team's going to poach him like that, just because they're going to see how hard he works. On the field, you see that, and you see him working. He has improved every week. He's not anywhere close to ready, but I think a team will take him and try and redshirt him the way the Falcons would. If you're going to sit 7 guys every week anyway, you might as well take one of those spots up as Starr.
Okay. Oh, I tried to look and see, what teams worked out Tyler Starr before the draft. And I think the Patriots are one of them. And the Patriots are notorious for poaching other teams' guys. So I guess, basically until the Patriots decide to poach him, that's how long he'll last in the practice squad. So that could be 1 day or, 100 days.
Basically.
All right. Well, Scott, that's all the mailbag questions we have this week.
That's it?
Yeah. That was 8, so I think that was pretty good. Any other last thoughts before we duck out of here?
Yeah, if anybody knows how to fix computers, I would be very grateful. Because my computer's kind of messed up. I can't connect into Chrome. I can work on everything else except for Chrome on my computer, which is why my video is a little bit darker today. So, yeah, if you know a good IT guy, hit me up. If you are a good IT guy, please hit me up.
All right.
Other than that.
All right. You can hit us up on Twitter. I'm at FalcFan. Scott is at Scott Karasik, as you can see on the video. Hit up the show at Falcons PFC. Be sure to follow PF Central. Check out their stuff, and we got one more preseason game. And next week we're actually talking about real, actual football. Talking about that, previewing that Saints game. Looking forward to it. So tune in next week, folks.